Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the City of Port Orchard's Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting. Today is Monday, February 14th. We have a published agenda this morning that we will go into. The number one item on the agenda today is the election of the new chair of this committee. We just went through committee assignments as we entered the new year 2022, and council members Fred Chang, Mark Trineri, and myself will be the new committee members. So Fred, what are your thoughts on chair?
Well, I was wondering if we should defer this until Mark attends. Otherwise, I was thinking, should we consider nominating Mark for chair?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that without him here. Do you have interest in becoming the chair?
I would if Mark does not.
Okay, so we'll do this. We'll take this offline. If Mark wants it, it sounds like it's his. If not, then you will become chair. Is that kind of what I'm hearing, Fred?
Yeah, I'd be happy to be chair.
Perfect. And okay, well then there we go. We can do that via email or text message or whatever. We'll get that done in advance of our next meeting. So let's move on to our second agenda item, and this is discussion with Samantha. Samantha's probably can be pulled over. And Fred, this was kind of your agenda item, so if you'd like to provide a little overview, please do.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all aware that Samantha has sort of created two incredible retail stores on Bay Street. The first being Josephine's Mercantile, the second being Revival. And I do see her from time to time because I do sell air plants in Josephine's, as a disclosure. And I know she has
if I may, Josephine's in the attendees. Could we bring her over? That's been our normal practice as we bring the business owners over.
Ask for that to happen.
Yeah, I think she's coming over. And as way of introduction, I hear that she often has, great ideas for events and downtown. And I thought she should speak to this committee. There may be things that maybe we can tweak for events. I know that we've been very shy to have events because of COVID. But I know that Samantha is very aware of all the safety protocols, and she has an incredible head for generating events that attract a lot of people. So I thought it would be great if we heard from her.
Sure. You're on mute, Samantha.
You're muted, Samantha.
There we go. Sorry. Use Zooms too often, actually. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Fred, for the opportunity. I actually I'm on the Bay Street Association board, and we met last week. And really what I was talking with Fred about in the past is issuing permits for events downtown. I know that we're still kind of in limbo about how events can happen. I was honestly disappointed about the tree lighting, which I know is not necessarily one person's fault, but every other city had them. So I had people asking me, why not Port Orchard? And I'm hoping that by next year, we're moving in the right direction, that we can have those events again, because I truly believe that the events anchor downtown, but they anchor our entire Port Orchard area, how they spread and they ripple effect. But one of the things that mainly I wanted to address today, it's been a constant conversation at the Bay Street Association meeting, is the proper process of issuing permits for events that happen in downtown that affect all of us retailers that are here 365 days a year. For example, the cruise with their vendors, the Jingle Bell Run, the Yukon Do It Run that happened December 18th. Bay Street Association Board would like to offer that maybe somebody could, I don't want to say join, but maybe be participant in issuing those permits, because unfortunately those events have actually hurt us quite a bit. The cruise hurt my business. I just opened Revival in April, and my whole purpose of Revival is to revitalize what people think of downtown Port Orchard, because it's my hometown. I love it. I think there's so much cool history. I think we're an amazing city, and I do highlight Port Orchard quite a bit in my shop. I carry a lot of retail and merchandise because we have a lot of people that visit us. I'm shocked, being born and bred here. I'm shocked how many people come to Port Orchard just to get away, and I'm proud of that. So the Revival's purpose is really highlighting the Pacific Northwest and essentially Port Orchard. But the events like the cruise actually hurt us when the way that they set up. And the events like the Yukon that happened the weekend before Christmas, there was no parking for normal shoppers until almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that hurt a lot of businesses. And I don't know why. I think people come to me and talk to me. Maybe it's because I'm open 7 days a week, or maybe because I love doing events like the night market and they know that I kind of spearhead those. But I would like to offer that one of us on the board can maybe be part of a committee that issues and grants those permits, and not necessarily says yes or no, but maybe gives advice or ideas on how we can just do them better so everybody wins, if that makes sense.
Hey, Sam.
Just a quick thought, Rob, just a quick thought is there's always been a standing invitation for a member of POPSA to be present at these committee meetings. We meet monthly, and I think this is probably the right forum to have that back and forth dialogue. Yeah. So it probably wouldn't be necessarily a part of the formal approval policy, but it would be a part of the discussion so we can understand the impacts to those downtown, right? I mean, that you're spot on with that. And so I think this is the forum to get that input. And then we can carry that forward from the committee members up the chain. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, well, there's two things in this side that I can touch base on. One, I'm meeting today with Larry Rubio from the cruise later today, so I can share. I know that, at least I believe, the cruise could happen without closing Bay Street. It's the vendor fare that goes with it that closes Bay Street. And I know a number of the events are having heartburn over our police chief is wanting when we close Bay Street or we close Harrison, and you've got events on both sides of Harrison and the bus traffic through there, that extensive traffic control plans and potentially flaggers, and these event holders have heartburn with that, but it's necessary for public safety. For if you've got pedestrians or you're closing the street and you're redirecting traffic, you need to have barriers or closure of the street. There has been question in the past, and there hasn't been a voice against closing the street in the past. And if that's the unified voice of the Merchants Association, we need to hear that, because it's a big deal to close the state highway when we do it. And we can't have a parade without closing the street. I think some of these other events can exist and still keep the street open. And so I'm definitely open to that conversation.
Yeah. And just kind of from a historical standpoint over the last couple of years, Samantha, this topic has come up a lot, and it's not only in this committee, but amongst the entire city council. And we're trying to look at things today, and we're trying to look at things into the future. And as downtown Port Orchard continues to redevelop, which is what we all want, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to do these types of things. There's just going to be more people impacted. Think if we had more residential, living downtown, and, these things are coming. And so as our city evolves, these types of policies have to evolve along with it. And so I think, we're spot on of having somebody from POPS attend and provide that feedback is critical. So we hear the voice of those that are impacted.
Yeah. And I think maybe I'm more vocal now, especially since I have two businesses. Like, my family's entire livelihood is wrapped up in this. And now having a second shop, to be honest, I was frustrated because I'm like, I want good neighbors, open 7 days a week. And I thought the best neighbor I could be is my own neighbor. So when this building came available at 702 across the street, I jumped on it. And the cruise was actually my lowest Sunday in all of August, which I planned, I prepared, I had staffing. We lost our shirts. And I'm not opposed. We actually took in POPSPA a survey that we sent out to all, I think it was 87 members at the time, asking them what events they like in downtown, which ones they don't, how many times a year should we close the street. And I was actually surprised. A lot of people are okay 2 to 3 times a year closing the street. But for me, it was how the vendors were set up. They were set up in a tunnel. So they went down the middle of the street, but they didn't walk into the businesses. And when the businesses are tax revenue 365 days a year, those are the businesses we need to support and highlight so that people know what to come back to. And I had stuff set up in the back for classic car guys and everything like that, and nobody ever saw it. So I do agree to a point that there's going to be a certain time that we can't always close down the street, but I think it's just sometimes the layout. That it is my strong suit. I've done big events at the Kitsap County Fairgrounds for years, like usually about 10,000 people. So I know mass numbers like the cruise, but I always see that there's sometimes a better way, or like Ginger's event, the Yukon, love it. But is there a way that we can ask them, can you provide a shuttle so that normal customers can still come down and shop from us? Because I've done a few marathons. When you run, you get back in your car and you leave. You don't necessarily go shopping. So we're sitting there the Sunday before Christmas waiting. So it's just those little things that I don't oppose them having events. I love them. I appreciate them, but is there a better way we can do them so that everybody wins? So, and I appreciate this. I'm new to the Bay Street Association board. I think that everybody on the board agrees there needs to be change. There needs to be a little bit of shakeup on the board and how we do things. And we're all excited about that. We're excited about what it looks like in the future. So they said, will you be the spokesman of this? And I said, sure. So I would love to come to these meetings and definitely not naysay any events, but how can we do them better?
So Sam, I guess my request would be if Pop versus you, and I respect you a great deal, but it would be very helpful if we got a formal letter from POPSA, that POPSA's position is this, or, and so that that's really the voice. Then you're speaking for the voice of all the merchants. You may not get 100% of the merchants agreeing with you, but if the majority of your membership and your board agrees to it, that's going to carry a lot of weight in our decision-making process.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, the number one event that all vendors want back is the night market. And it only happened one summer and then COVID happened. But again, we're still trying to figure out what the flagging situation is going to be, what the protocols are going to be. Tacoma started their night markets again, Gig Harbor. But again, I know that we also have to work within certain parameters since we do have a state highway running through our town. But we will get that information. I will get that letter and we'll talk about it as a board member or a board group.
So Sam, I think the best thing to not need flaggers is stay out of the road. If you're not in the road and you're using established crossings, where and the other one is Harrison. So if you're on, because remember the transit bus comes in by Penn Bev and has to come down by the library. And so if you're wanting to utilize the parking lot, you need to be on one side of Harrison or the other side of the Harrison. If you're on both sides, it's going to require flaggers, because now you have an uncontrolled area without a crosswalk. So,
okay.
but where Penn Bev and Peninsula Feed is, that's Harrison. That section of Harrison is Fathoms wants to be on both sides of the street there. And if you're back behind your business and we're dropping some barricades down, I don't see, I'm not the police chief, but I can't see us needing to have flaggers for something like that if you're contained in a parking lot.
Yeah, and that's kind of our hope. Honestly, I've gotten a lot of push from people to grow night market, but I also believe that quantity over quality. I'd rather have a good amount of quality vendors in a little area. It produces synergy and excitement. I think our first night market, we had 3,000 people, guesstimation, of course. And then the night market just grew from there. So it was a pretty amazing event and I loved everybody coming down, but I don't see us necessarily growing towards Harrison. I love to highlight the new walkway that we have. I love to highlight businesses down there, but I don't think we need to close any of that stuff down. So I'll definitely talk to the board. They were wondering about that. And I was like, look, if we have to get flaggers, POPSA, like I'm supporting two that are going to a training, I'm paying for their training. So we're trying to find volunteers that we can pay to have trained. But as you know, it's kind of an uphill battle sometimes. So is there any
I have an event I'd like to share if you guys would let me. I'm working. So the Chris Craft Rendezvous is July 16th, I believe. And Josh Farley, Kathy Garcia, myself, Matt Murphy, and Corrine Haydock kicked this off last week. And the purpose of it is to get more people to come down and see the boats is one. And secondly, to get the people that own the boats that are visiting us off their boats and walking around our downtown, because they might stop in and do some shopping if we get them off the boat. So I've got if I can, I'll pull this up here. Maybe. Let's see here and see if I can do a screen share. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
It says Port Orchard past and present. That's the idea. So my our goal is to have 10 or 12 stations along this route and have storytellers there. Kathleen, there's a mural on the library, and that's kind of, we're going to start at the dock and hand out these maps, and is the plan. The first station likely is the library, and there's a story that goes with that mural. And I don't even know what that story is, but Kathleen says there is. So send people out the pedestrian path, walk through the farmer's market. You end up down at Etta Turner Park, and Penny Nixon, who's Etta's mom, has agreed to tell Etta's story. And then head down in front of the Ford dealership, drop back down into the park, cross at the flashing beacon over by the bistro, go the Polaris Theater that would have a station. We've got the theater. No, before that, the Sydney Art Gallery. Sorry, and then we've got along Sydney. We've got some very unique historic homes that have stories, and I'm probably going to be the volunteer on that section of the street. The Log Cabin Museum, the county courthouse has unique history. Drop down to City Hall, the community event center site, and then back into downtown is kind of the route. It's a 2-mile loop. I don't know that we'll get everybody to do it. There'll be an alternate route that cuts over at Kitsap Street that doesn't take you up the hill for those that can't do the hill. But this is just something that we kicked this off last week, and we're hoping to do it the weekend of the Chris Craft Rendezvous, to give the boaters something to do in town and draw people to downtown and draw the boaters off the boats. So that's our thought.
I love that thought. I think I love Etta Turner Park too. And if we talked about Silver Springs, I think we have so many new people in Port Orchard that don't know the history of Port Orchard. And I would love to throw my ring in the hat for 702, since it's an old Howe Ford dealership, because I still in the back room have the entry cranes, I have the pictures. I just think if people knew the history, there's just a little bit more respect for what we're doing. And I think people would love it. I think it's a great idea.
So I can count on you to talk about your store and be there.
I love history. That's why I love Josephine's. But yeah, I think highlighting, like I said, Silver Springs, there's so many cool things that people don't know about downtown. So even the old Kitsap Bank that burnt down, just being in that parking lot, but talking about obviously I don't know, everything that we have here. So yeah, definitely you can count me in.
It was called Howe Hardware, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Originally? Well,
it was Howe Hardware. And that's why I have a Model T Ford in my front window, because that's what they would have assembled here. I think Howe Hardware started in 1918, and then they did Ford when cars came out. But I love that people will go in my back room because it looks small, and they'll go, what is this? I'm like, this is where they assembled. And this, so it just gives people a little bit more respect, like, oh, this is so cool. Yeah.
Cool. I got you on the list.
Great. Well, thanks for the update there, Rob. And Samantha, thanks for joining today. We look forward to seeing you. We'll make sure that you are on the standing meeting invitation for this monthly. We need to figure out in the next week the exact date and time. I don't know that this is going to change, but we haven't had that discussion yet. We're going to wait until Mark Trenary gets on. He's the other committee member. And but anyway, you'll be on the standing invitation, and we'll look to have you join us.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great week.
Sam, I have a question for you.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever thought of running your Redeemed Revival in Port Orchard? How much square footage do you need for that?
Right now I have 40,000 square feet at the Kitsap County Fairgrounds. But again, COVID has changed everything. So I don't know what the turnout would be. I'm actually not going to do Redeem Revival this year. Just because since it's on county property, there's a lot more requests that they have, and I just can't meet in a short amount of time. But our last one that we did before COVID, we had 9,500 participants. So it just depends, and that would be a weather dependent event also. So there's variations that I could do of the event. There's one in South Carolina where different stores pop up, and they have on average about 15,000 people that come, stay in hotels. I've already thought about that, using the ferries, we have so many Airbnbs here now. So my wheels have been spinning about that, having it here in Port Orchard.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, moving on to the next topic. This will be Mr. Nick Bond talking about the Crown Castle cell tower.
Yeah, so I am sharing my screen right now. We have an existing lease of a cell phone tower out at our 390 reservoir at the industrial park. And so the city owns the property highlighted in red here. And when I zoom in, you will see there are two antennas on the site, one at the south property line. That is not what we're talking about. There's another one. You can kind of see the shadow pointing to the northeast. And this is the area where we were contacted in January by Crown Castle, because they are seeking to revise their lease to expand the lease area because they want to put a generator in place. And of course, by providing a generator, that ensures that we have cell phone service in the event of power outages. I threw this on the Economic Development Committee meeting just to get additional eyes on it. And I assume there's no objection to the city staff and the attorney working on a lease that would add I think it's about a 10 by 15 enclosed area that would be off to the side of this existing fenced area. But I wanted to get your eyes on it and see if you had any questions or concerns before we put any significant time or effort into this. The existing lease still has 1 5-year extension built into the lease agreement, but with the expanded area, we're talking about basically updating and replacing the existing lease with a new lease that would have a long 20 or 30-year term where we would be renting out this area going forward, and that would replace the existing remaining 5-year term. And of course, we're looking at the rates and making sure that the fee that we're being paid for this is competitive.
Perfect. So do you know, is it just a matter of they're putting in generator equipment? Are they doing any other upgrades to the cell tower at all?
Not that we're aware of, but one of the things they indicated was they wanted the opportunity to add additional carriers to this structure. And so there is the chance that they would be adding an additional provider to this if they could find one. And so the terms of how the lease changes, if that were to occur, would still have to be worked out. And so our attorney has flagged that for us as an issue that, if an additional provider is put on the tower, should the city be compensated differently than based on the current use of the tower?
Right. Well, I don't have any problem at all. It makes sense. And I think it's great to be able to have that backup. Fred, do you have any comments on that?
No, I think it's good. You sort of answered my question, Nick, that it's not exclusively just GTE wireless or AT&T, but it could be several carriers if they wanted to share it or co-locate.
Yeah, I think Crown Castle assumed this lease or obtained this lease or was assigned the lease from GTE. And so Crown Castle just manages these tower facilities and then finds providers that they sign to use it.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. This will be on the land. Oh, go ahead.
I would say carry on.
All right. This will be on the land use committee as well this week, just to loop them in. But I just figured we would mention it to you guys as well, so that the majority of council knows that we're working on this.
Any other feedback on this matter? Gary, any thoughts?
I think anytime you can expand coverage without having to add a new tower, it's a smart idea, and it increases revenue too for the city.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to revert back to our first agenda item really quick. I see that Mark's been able to join us now. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for being here. We need to elect a chair for this 2-year term of this committee.
I thought Mark was elected chair right at the beginning.
Well, Fred offered that up, but I put a stop to it because I didn't think it was fair to pick on the new guy that hard. So, but Mark, I think what Fred had said is if you would like to be the chair, there would be support of that. And if you preferred not to right now, then Fred would be chair. So what are your thoughts?
Well, with the exception that I missed already part of this meeting, and I apologize for that. I did have it showing at 5 o'clock this afternoon. But I'm glad it's a morning meeting since it's Valentine's Day. my report to the council tomorrow might be a little bit shallow if I were to take on the chair of this committee at this point, but I'd be happy to do that.
So I could do, so basically this would be my last meeting as chair. So I'd be happy to give tomorrow's report, and then you would assume duties next month.
Okay, yeah, that'd be fine. I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. Fred, you're okay with that?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So real quick, let's take 5 minutes talking about time and day of week. The last couple of years, this committee has met on the second Monday of the month, which is today at 9:30 in the morning. I make it work. It's not optimal for my day schedule, but I'm not sure what other times there are. I personally like it when we could do like 5 p.m. meetings on the night of a city council meeting, because a lot of times there's nothing for us to do and staff to do during that window. So it's an efficient time, but I don't know that there's additional Tuesdays that they're already all full.
Yeah, those are all booked up.
All
There's
of them
3 of them. All 3 of them are, yeah.
Okay. Well, should we just, since if it's not broke, don't fix it, should we just leave it here until it becomes an issue? Seems to have worked. We figured it out.
The first Tuesday doesn't have, but there's no council meeting. That's a night off. You're
No, I
wanting
was
to do
talking
2.
about.
And we have planning commission, so
Oh.
our staff has to be at a different meeting at 6.
Okay.
Well, then I say I would just make a recommendation that we just leave it second Monday of the month at 9:30. Fred, Mark, can you try to work with that? Gary, Josie, Nick, Mayor?
Yeah, this works good for me.
Okay.
You want to try to do it a little earlier? 9, 8:30 or 9, or it's your guys' call.
Well, 9:30 gives me a chance to get things settled here at the office and get things moving forward. So I'm fine with 9:30, second
Yeah.
Monday of the month.
Okay.
Me too. Mhm.
Perfect. Well, we've settled on that. We're going to have Mr. Mark Trenary as the chair of this committee, and we'll be meeting on the second Monday of the month, 9:30 a.m. If staff could pick out a recurring calendar invite, that'd be fantastic. Okay.
So we will send a recurring calendar just placeholder for you, but because this is a webinar, the webinar links will still
Yep.
come monthly in an email.
That's perfect. Yep. Thank you for that. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4. Again, this is Nick Bond, projected population growth.
All right, so I've been looking at our permit activity, and as we're ramping up for the next comprehensive plan cycle, I've been trying to anticipate how much growth is going to come between now and when we write our next comprehensive plan update, which is currently due at the end of June in 2024. What I have done is when the census data came out and when OFM sends their annual projections, they give us updated information on how many people per household we see in the city. And so for multifamily units, it's at 2.01 people per household. For single family units, it's 2.84. And what I've done is I've tried to project when various developments are going to be receiving certificates of occupancy, because that's when they actually become available for lease or for sale. And I'm seeing, based on everything that's being constructed right now and that's in for permitting right now, some pretty large population numbers. And I want to make the council aware of this. And this is something that you guys may want to bring up in your retreat as you start talking about future objectives for the city. So I'm going to share a spreadsheet right now and kind of walk you through the numbers that I've come up with. I've broken this table into 4 years, and because OFM reports population as of April 1st every year, the first box is what I'm expecting to see this coming April when OFM releases its new data. And so what I've done is I've gone through all of our projects and for everything from April 1st, 2021 through the present day, I know how many certificates of occupancy have been granted. Currently, we're sitting at 61 single family homes at 2.84 persons per household. Once those get occupied, that's 173 people coming into the city. The Sedgwick Apartments is a multifamily complex. They now have certificates of occupancy on all 136 units, and at 2 units per, or 2 people per dwelling, that's 272 people. And so I've gone through a variety of projects to extrapolate where I think our numbers are going to be. And keep in mind, when OFM reports, they're also taking in the jail population, which does fluctuate. And especially during COVID, the numbers have jumped around a bit. So what happens with the jail is maybe different than what happens with permanent residents coming into the city. But for this year, I'm expecting around.
Mick, that won't vary more than 50, 60 people at the most. I mean, if they open another wing or something.
Right, but with them releasing people immediately rather than booking them into jail,
Yeah.
The number has been lower recently. So
Yeah,
if they stop that practice, it would go up.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this next April's number, I'm expecting around 573 people to be added to the city. And that's based on what I'm expecting to be granted occupancy by the end of March. When we move into the 2022-2023 period, there's a number of projects that are under construction, the Geiger Plat, the Magnolia Ridge, which used to be called Blueberry Ridge. There's some townhomes on Salmonberry that are under construction. Stetson Heights Phase 1, they're vertical on probably 80% of the Phase 1 lots. Amherst Plat should be fully built out. McCormick West Division 11 should be fully built out, and McCormick Village Division 2 should be built out by that time. And then the Haven Apartments is the project on Sydney that is under construction, and you're seeing those buildings totally framed up. So for 2023, the April 1st additional growth, I'm looking at about 1,200 additional people coming into the city. And so with each of these tables, I'm keeping kind of a running score on our population, going from the current April 1, 2021 number of 15,960. It goes up to 16,533 and then 17,815. Things really start getting tight in the 2023 to 2024 period. We have the completing some of the projects where I expect to be kind of partially occupied in the next 1 year period. But the Haven Apartment should be fully occupied by the time the 2024 number comes out. You've got Riverstone, you've got McCormick Village Divisions 3 and 4. The Overlook Apartments are breaking ground this spring. The Rush Live Work project at Sydney and Sedgwick all add up to about 1,776 additional residents in that period. Going 1 year farther forward, and these are all projects that are happening in terms of there is movement on the permits, and it's not just a pre-app meeting or something else. By 2025, it's an additional 1,500 people, taking the city to 21,159 in population. So that's a total growth between our last April population number of about 5,200 residents. These are the projects that are in the upper part of this table are things that I'm very certain about. When you go into the other pipeline growth, these are the things that I think could be added to these lists over the next 3 years. Stetson Ridge is an additional phase of Stetson Heights. You've got the McCormick North commercial core, which includes multifamily housing. They're submitting civil plans right now for review. Even 429 Bay Street, I've got this on this lower table because they've got to do some environmental cleanup and they haven't negotiated that, but those permits are ready to issue. This Bridgeview Apartments, they're in for civil, and they just resubmitted civil plans, and I believe we're going to be issuing those in the next month. Plisco Apartment.
When he said 429 Bay Street, that's the Cheers site.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank you. The Plisco Apartments, we signed a multifamily tax exemption agreement on that last year. So all of these are very much real projects that are moving forward. When you get to the bottom half of this, though, is where the future phases of McCormick are. That McCormick has indicated that they're going to build these in the next 6 years, but when they actually pull permits is still a little bit more foggy. But the big takeaway here is this is an additional 6,000 people potentially coming to the city that are getting added to that 5,200 number above. And it's really a matter of when do these actually get occupancy, and And can the market actually absorb all of this housing, or is there going to be some economic slowdown, or is it just too much housing and there's not enough people moving to Port Orchard? So when you're thinking about projects and priorities over the next few years, I think it's really important to keep kind of a focus on the economic growth. And obviously for businesses or other parties who are trying to make, projections in their business, there is a significant wave of population coming to Port Orchard, and it's probably at least 5,200 over the next 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years if it takes a little longer to fill up some of these units, and that 6,000 more residents thereafter could be sooner, or it could be a little bit more delayed depending on what happens economically. And so,
Nick, what do you layer this on top of what our allocation of growth is through the UGA? How does this just outpace it by 100% or?
Not 100%. We have not set our population targets yet. And so that's one of the items on the council agenda for Tuesday night is kind of clarifying the direction that we're going in terms of setting targets. The really important thing is that we cannot outstrip our growth allocation prior to adopting our plan. And that's what happened in Gig Harbor. Was they grew so much while they were writing their plan that by the time they adopted their plan, they had already surpassed their growth allocation, and they were conditionally certified by PSRC, which impacted their ability to receive grants. I think, this 5,200 is probably about what we will add, maybe a little higher than what we will add between now and 2024 when we adopt our plan. So as long as we have an allocation that's higher than 5,200, I'm feeling reasonably comfortable that we can adopt a plan. The problem is that our plan is going to be we're going to make plans for population targets that we are likely to exceed. So it's probably not realistic unless we're closer to 10 or 12,000 people over the 20-year planning period. In some of the alternatives that I've run, it's closer to 16 or 18,000 people over the 20-year planning period. And so it's if we were to just look at the historic rate, which is adding about 360 people per year, if we just said, let's add 360 a year over the next 20 years, it's closer to 9 or 10,000 in total growth. But if you increase that or have a 3% growth rate, or actually look at these projects, it's significantly higher.
So one of the conversations that's been going on and that Nick's been sharing with the counties, they backed off it a little bit over the weekend, but the county's beating the drum again about shrinking our UGA. And in particular Bethel South, because there isn't infrastructure out there. But that's where we're going to be able to grow the light industrial and commercial in the city, and we don't want that to happen. And so an idea I threw to Nick this morning, there's a city that's on an island in our county that doesn't want growth, and as we negotiate these allocations, possibly do we take a little bit more if we could get an agreement from there's a process now for transferring UGAs between county and cities, but if both parties agree to it. So could we hitch a transfer agreement for Bethel South to us taking a slightly larger allocation of population with that we might have to need anyway because of the growth that we're seeing to stay compliant. So there's a lot of moving parts in that, but that's just an idea I had this morning that I shared with Nick.
Following up on what Sean was asked, Sean mentioned the UGA, and that got me to thinking, Nick, do we have any idea of any plans going on in the UGA? And how would that affect? So we don't know, but they could potentially be developing there.
What would happen in the UGA if it was pulled out of the UGA? The county would downzone it. It wouldn't be developed.
Okay, but do we know? Do they have any plans similar to ours, do they have any population projections for the next 4 years?
No,
in the UGA?
no, And I would say that the actual trend in the urban growth area has been a really low percentage of growth. I mean, it's certainly less than 1% annual growth in the urban growth area. And I think part of the reason is that the county zoning is so unfavorable in terms of its net density calculations. And if they adopted the same zoning that we had, the capacity of that UGA would be triple what it is today. And it would make projects pencil for developers in a way that it doesn't currently. So
Right.
I think the county zoning is so restrictive that it is preventing a whole lot of anything from happening out there right now.
Absolutely right, Nick. Yep, especially Bethel South. There's large sections of land down there that could be developed, but there's no economic reason to provide infrastructure there because it doesn't pencil, because the zoning is terrible.
So, we've talked about this before, but this is such great information. Should we proactively maybe outreach to those property owners and just letting them know these types of
I
things?
have multiple
Right.
times.
And the risk they're at if they were to get downgraded, right? And so this might be a good opportunity for them to come together and
Yeah.
reduce annexation.
Yeah, I've had those conversations more than one time. And the problem too is because of logical boundaries, the guys that want in are out on the end.
Right.
It's the guys in the middle that don't seem to care. And we can't get to the end without getting the middle. That's why this tool that the county had, or the legislature passed last year could solve a lot of problems. And it just, we could make it happen. I spoke with Nick, we had a revenue sharing agreement that we opted out of, that the county still has heartburn over. And it was a bad deal before. Okay. It was a 4-year phase on sales tax. And so the county got 100% of the revenue the first year, but we on day one, we're providing 100% of the services.
Mhm.
I think if we needed to do a revenue sharing agreement, but it was equitable in services and the revenues, and in a sliding scale, we could probably should consider something like that. But for the county to get all the revenue and us provide all the services wasn't fair. And that's why we opted out of the revenue sharing agreements.
Yeah. Well, I would just recommend sharing this spreadsheet with other committees because I think it's relevant for, right, everything, land use, transportation, huge. Is a great data, Nick. Thanks for sharing it today.
Yeah, and this too is on the land use committee agenda on Wednesday. And we're doing something a little bit different with transportation. We signed a task order where we're basically plugging this information into our transportation model. And we're looking at a couple of key facilities to see how badly they're going to perform once these numbers are realized, and possibly making some recommendations about moving forward with with certain projects sooner than others. So we're looking at it with multiple committees right now.
Perfect. Good job. Thank you for that.
Can we get a copy of that spreadsheet sent to us?
Yeah, I can email that to you, Gary. I will send it here shortly.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 5. We have a standing building permits reports that's reported up monthly at this meeting. So Nick, you again.
Well, included in your report, I had our clerks run reports going back to our last Economic Development Committee meeting, and it just shows what permits have actually been issued over the past few months. I think the highlights are there. I mean, there's several multifamily projects that are that were listed in the permit list. I believe some of the Tarragon Apartments, the Sydney Road Apartments projects are listed in there. There's a whole lot of single family residences. Like I said, at Stetson Heights, I believe we've issued now 80 out of the 100 of the 103 lots that are out there. 83 of the lots have permits issued on them. So it's just more of what you've been seeing.
Are they getting their infrastructure challenges? I know they thought we pulled a fast one on them or something, but we didn't. It's about cleaning the ponds need to be cleaned out and corrected. And then I saw the construction at the Albertson lift station, so that's been answered. That's happening.
Yeah, we gave DR Horton a punch list because only 22 of their lots currently have adequate water pressure. And so we had installed a valve in the road that would separate that part of the system from parts of the system that are higher in elevation and that don't yet have water pressure because the booster pump isn't done. So they are seeking certificates of occupancy for the first 22 lots. In terms of building code requirements, we're in good shape. There's working fire hydrants, everything is mostly in order on the building side of things. For public works, the stormwater pond number 1, we need to inspect and verify that all the control structures are installed properly and at the correct elevations. There's a handful of items that we've given them, but one of the problems is that Albertson's lift station, they're waiting on a transformer because the transformer had to be upsized and PSE has to do that work. And so PSE is further out than DR Horton would like them to be. And so they're trying to find a way if they're trying to figure out whether they can start sending sewage to this pump or whether it is truly at capacity right now. And so we've put that burden on their engineer to demonstrate to us that we can actually turn or have people moving into these houses. So there's still a few hurdles to clear, but we've got our arms around what needs to be done, and DR Horton is working to that end. I think the bigger question is on the booster pump so that they can get these other 60 or so homes occupied. That booster pump has to be complete, and so they're starting on the building and they're starting to work on that, but Department of Health also needs to sign off on that booster pump design, and so they can only get so far down the road before health has to also approve that system. So they're to some extent, there's things that are outside of the city's control that they have to get sorted out.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, any go backs today? I have one. Mark, you had mentioned earlier just about the whole being prepared to give a report up to the full city council. And it happens on every committee where sometimes the chair can't be in attendance. And then one of the other council members in attendance would just go ahead and give that report. So just know moving forward that happens, and that's totally appropriate.
And it's going to happen this time. You're not at the next council meeting.
The next council meeting. So Fred, the next council meeting, if you wouldn't mind giving this report, that'd be fantastic. On the 22nd. Okay, any other good of the orders? All right, seeing none.
Well, I want to point out something that might be relevant. It's not in the city, but out of the port there, everybody that I talk to is always interested in how the restaurant process is going. So that project's off the ground, and they should be putting walls up pretty soon with expected completion by the 1st of August. So you'll have fish and chips out at the port again in August.
Great. Thanks,
Gary, where in the port? On the Port Orchard side?
Airport.
The airport.
Oh, airport.
Diners being remodeled.
Yeah, the old what used to be called the Neon Sky. I don't know what the last name was.
Diner?
The diner, yeah, that's getting completely rebuilt, Fred. So it'll be a new facility.
Good.
Nice.
Any other good of the orders? If not, thank you for your time, and we will adjourn today's meeting. We'll see you next month.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
All right, see you.